Hello crafty friends, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be sharing the measurements and the design for how to make this 6x6 interactive folio. I think these make perfect gifts and would be great for keeping in your summer memories. I'm going to be working with the Love from Lizzie to the Beach card kit. There is a ton that comes in this card kit, but I'll mainly be focusing on the pattern papers and the ephemeras. So let's build the folio. These come together so quickly and you only need to use 4 pieces of plain cardstock. So you'll want to cut the first two to 6 1/4 by 11, and then you'll score along the long side at 2 5/8 of an inch, 9 inches and 9 1/4. We're going to do those exact same score marks on each of those pieces, and this creates the base for our folio. Now, I do believe that you could pull these together probably in around 45 minutes. My entire filming footage for making this was just over an hour, and that included me figuring out some of the measurements, so you could definitely mass produce these as gifts. Once we have those score lines in place, we're going to fold them over and use a burn folder just to reinforce and burnish down those folds. This really does help in giving crisp professional finishes to all of those folds and helps to keep the album nice and square. So I'll burnish down each of those edges. You'll see that it creates a small gusset here, and that allows us to have all of those inserts and the interactive pieces on the inside of the album. So once you're happy with the folding, it's time to glue everything together. You'll want the small flap over on the right hand side for each of the pieces, and then you'll add some tape all around the inside of that first flap. So I'm using the tape that came in the kit for this. It's a really nice narrow double-sided sticky tape. Just be careful not to put any of the tape over those score lines, because you do want the album to close up nicely without sticking together. So once I've peeled off the tape, I'll make sure that I have that larger flap folded inwards and then just press that down, again just avoiding that score line so everything folds up neatly. This flap's going to be used to create a pocket, so we'll need 2 pages for inside the album. We'll cut these down to 6 1/4 by 6 1/4, and do keep those offcuts because if you want to add the additional interactive elements, they'll be perfect for pulling that together. Okay, so we'll add tape again to one of those flaps. I'm adding it to the inside because I want my pocket to be on top of the next page. You don't really need the tape along the fold line there, but I just think it helps to kind of really secure everything in place. So I'll peel up the edges of that tape, and then I'll place down the 6 1/4 by 6 1/4 cardstock and fold everything up. And now you'll see that has created a pocket and a page for us. I'm going to do the same thing here with this flap, but this time I want the pocket to be on the inside of the page. So I'm going to add the tape to the top of this flap, and then I'll place the 6x6 on top, and you'll see that that creates an additional page for us and a pocket on the inside. Now, if you don't like having pockets in your album, you can just stick this down completely and decorate the page, but I think it's nice to have that extra piece. So now here's that extra interactive element. We're going to need 2 pieces cut to 6 1/4 by 3 3/8 of an inch, and then we're going to score at 1/4 inch on the short side. You could make these measurements slightly bigger and then score a larger fold here for extra security to keep the album together, but because I've got this really thin tape, I decided to do just a short fold here so I could stick everything together without too much bulk inside my album. So I'm peeling off the tape and I'm working on this back page to add these kind of doors, I suppose, and just pressing those down, once again avoiding any of the fold lines so the album still folds up nicely. And now you can see we have this interactive kind of door opening for that back page. I'll press everything down, and then I'm going to cut 2 more pieces at 5 1/2 by 5 1/2. These are my inserts, so you will need an extra piece of paper for the inserts. I decided to use yellow for all of this so everything would match, but you could definitely use the cardstock that comes in the kit and have everything be different colours. So now I'm counting up how many full pages I have. I am including the front of those doors as a full page, and you'll see why in just a minute. But this came together so very quickly. You could definitely mass produce these as gifts. So I'm sorting through my pattern paper and I'm picking out what I think are kind of the busier patterns and the more plain patterns. I mean, they're all really interesting patterns within this pattern paper, so you can kind of go with what you feel. And I wanted this to have a ton of decoration, so I'm going to focus mostly with those kind of busier patterns for my decorating. I knew I wanted the beach huts for my front cover. Normally it takes me a while to decide which papers I'm putting where, but I decided, because these all coordinate so beautifully, to actually just shuffle up the papers, and then I'm going to do this kind of blind. So I'll go ahead and add tape. I am switching to my ATG gun just for speed as we go through this, and adding tape all over the back of this paper. Because this album's designed to work with 6x6 patterned paper, you don't have to cut the paper at all, so it honestly could not come together any quicker. I think you could probably get one of these done in, fully done and decorated in 30 to 45 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that and add tape, and as you can see, I'm just picking up the next piece off my pile because I don't have to worry about any cuts. I don't even have to look at the paper for the orientation before I add the glue. I can just go ahead and add my tape and then place it down inside the album. You can see that the measurements leave just a small ring around each of those pattern papers where you can see the yellow card base. And I just think, look how beautifully they coordinate. You don't have to think about the placement whatsoever because they all go together so well. I did almost stick this piece upside down. Luckily I caught that. And then I'll just press that in. And you'll see here for this next piece, I will have to cut it in half. Really simple, just cut it straight down the middle at 3 inches and then add the glue and press this down. You want to make sure that the pattern paper lines up with the edge of those doors. And again, it will leave the kind of yellow ring around the outside. Perfect. So in no time whatsoever, we have the album created and most of the pages decorated. We will have to do some cuts for the remaining pages, and at this point I'm realizing I forgot to add my closure magnet. So I have some magnet paper here and I'm going to insert that behind the front cover. So I'm just using a spatula to kind of loosen up the glue, and then I'll go ahead and press this inside underneath the beach hut paper. In hindsight, I should have used a larger piece of the magnetic paper. It did, once I'd added all of my embellishments inside the album, that magnet was just a little bit too small and not quite strong enough to hold everything shut. So if you were making this, I would definitely recommend using a larger strip of the magnet paper or some stronger magnets. So then you want to place your magnet on top of the one that's already in there, and then add your tape and carefully close up the album, making sure everything's nice and square, because then that will train the kind of closure piece here to snap shut in the perfect place. So now I'm trimming down some cardstock to go inside the pockets. This is just because the space that we have left behind those pockets is slightly narrower because of the glue. So I'm just trimming some of the pieces off, and then I'll go ahead and stick that down. If that intimidates you at all, you can definitely stick down the patterned paper to the pages that we inserted before you close them up and create the pocket, and then you wouldn't have to worry about this step at all. So as you can see, it fits in really nicely. And again, I'm just kind of going blind, picking up the next piece within my pile and pressing that down. It takes away all of the guesswork and all of the time that you would spend kind of second guessing yourself as to whether or not you want to use these particular pieces, and it just makes the album come together so very fast. So now I have these pieces to cover up my opening and closing mechanism. I'm using the same pattern on the front and the back, but if you wanted to, you could definitely mix this up. And I'll place that down, and it completely covers the magnet piece here. So you can't see that it's there, but it still holds the book together. As I say, I would suggest you use a longer strip, but this works just fine for me. So now we have these inside pieces, and at this point I decided to switch to what I'm calling the kind of less busy papers. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle them. Arguably, I got carried away with my shuffling here and thought I was in Vegas and shuffled a little bit too much. But again, doing the same thing, just taking the top piece. So I'll cut these down to 6 by 2 7/8. It's just 1/8 of an inch shorter than the 3-inch pieces that we used on the front, and that's just to account for the fact that we have the fold in the paper, so it is ever so slightly smaller on this side. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. This time it's 2 pieces at 6 by 2 3/8, and I'm going to use these to cover up the front of each of those pocket pieces. So now we have those covered, there's only one more piece of decorating that we need to do with the patterned paper, and that is 4 pieces of cardstock cut to 5.5 by 5.5, and this is to create that matting and layering on those insert pieces that sit inside the pocket. Honestly, I cannot express how easy this is just to let the pattern paper do the work for you, and because they're so quick to make, you could definitely mass produce these, and I think they would make perfect gifts. Okay, so let's add some final touches. I've grabbed the stamp set that comes with the Love from Lizzie card kit, and I'm going to use some heat embossing. I have the sentiment here, and I added anti-static powder tool to my cardstock, and then I'll go ahead and stamp using VersaFine ink. I will double stamp this just to make sure that it's good and juicy so that embossing powder sticks exactly where I want it to. And I think this makes the perfect sentiment for this album. I used one of my Love from Lizzie embossing powders. This is in the colour navy. I don't know why I didn't put a piece of paper underneath me as I was working. Normally I would tip the excess onto a piece of paper and then use that folded in half to tip everything back into the jar. But one thing I love about the Love from Lizzie embossing powders is they have a really wide mouth to the jar, so it's really easy to kind of tip the excess powder back into the jar. Then I used my heat tool to heat set the Aloha Sunshine. And I'm using one of the Love from Lizzie rectangle frames. I just got these frames, and I have to say I have never seen a set of nested dies with quite so many variations of the size. So they have now got a permanent home on my craft desk, and I think I'll be reaching for these often. So I'll add the Aloha Sunshine onto the front of my album, just using some sticky tape, and you can see I've tipped out all of my ephemera onto my desk so I can start working on the pieces that I want to sit on the front of the album. One of the great things about this kit is that many of the shapes that are in the ephemera pack you also have in the stamps, especially if you purchase the add-on stamp set as well. So you don't just have to make this once and then think, okay, well, that's it done, because you can restamp many of the images and colour them yourself and fussy cut them and then make albums like this over and over. So I popped up those beach huts on some foam dots, and then I'm just using a glue pen to stick down these smaller pieces. There's no real rhyme or reason as to why I'm using the glue pen. I just find it's easy when you've got those intricate areas that you're trying to add the glue to. So I'm mixing and matching with the ephemera pieces. I wanted to keep in all the steps of the decorating here just so you can kind of see how I went about the process and picked what went where. So now for inside the album, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm almost treating these ephemera pieces as if they were stickers and just sticking them down to embellish the pieces of paper wherever I want a little bit of extra detail. So in just a second, I'll show you something else that you can do with these ephemera pieces to create almost like a pocket to add journaling cards or additional photos, and you don't have to go to the effort of making a pocket. I think that's a really great way to use these pieces, and again just adds to the interactivity inside this folio. So what I'm going to do is choose some of the larger ephemera pieces. I'm going to use the beach huts, and I'll just add adhesive to the bottom part of this piece. So when I stick that down, the top is open, and you'll see, I'll show you here with a scrap piece of paper, you can slide something in behind that and hold it in place inside your album. You don't just have to use the kind of beach huts or the more rectangle shapes. You can use one of the Love from Lizzie Lashes girls. I love these girls. She's released a few stamp sets now featuring these girls, and they're definitely some of my favourites. So as a final touch, I'm going to add some of the Love from Lizzie peel-offs. These are in the heart shape. It comes in a variety of sizes, and I've not done it yet, but I'm going to use some of those smaller ones on top of nail varnish as nail art, and then just seal them in with some top coat. So the album is all together. I'll show you it here with some pictures inserted. I've just put a few in, but there is a ton of space left for additional photos or for journaling cards. But I thought this would help you to visualize how you can add your memories inside of this folio. So I hope you're feeling inspired, and we'll use these measurements to create your very own 6x6 pattern paper folio. The entire folio is 6 1/4 by 6 1/4, but these measurements are absolutely perfect for letting the pattern paper do all the hard work in your folio making. The products used are linked in the description below, as well as a recap of the measurements. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope to see you back here again soon. Bye for now.